Jake claims Social Security at 62. Marcus waits until 70. They both think they made the smarter choice. They're both wrong, because both of them are about to spend the rest of their lives finding out that the simple answer, file early or file late, was never the right question. And by the time the math reveals itself, it's too late to undo it. Let's keep this fair. Jake and Marcus are both 62. They earned the same money over the same 35-year careers, which means the Social Security Administration calculated identical full retirement age benefits for both of them. $2,800 a month if they wait until 67 to file. They both have $800,000 saved in a retirement account. They live in the same kind of neighborhood, drive the same kind of car, and need about $60,000 a year to live comfortably. The only difference is when they decide to turn on Social Security. Jake files the day he turns 62. He doesn't even wait for his birthday party. He's done with work, he's been waiting for this moment for years, and as far as he's concerned, the math is simple. Money in his pocket today is worth more than money in his pocket someday. By filing at 62 instead of 67, his benefit gets permanently reduced by 30%. His $2,800 check becomes $1,960 a month. He doesn't care. He's collecting. Marcus does the opposite. He doesn't file. He's read every retirement blog, listened to every podcast, and he knows the headline number. For every year he waits past 67, Social Security adds 8% to his benefit. If he can hold out until 70, his $2,800 check becomes $3,472 a month. That's 77% more than Jake's check. Marcus is patient. Marcus has a plan. On day one, Jake has a $1,960 deposit hitting his account on the 3rd of the month. Marcus has a spreadsheet and a withdrawal strategy. Jake is at brunch. Marcus is at his desk. It's not even close in terms of how it feels. But feelings and math are two very different things. For the first 3 years, Jake is living the early retirement dream. The Social Security check hits his account on the 3rd of every month, like clockwork. He's traveling, he's golfing twice a week, he's picking up his grandkids from school in a way he never could when he was working. By age 65, Jake has collected roughly $70,560 in Social Security. Money that, as far as he's concerned, would have been left on the table if he'd waited. And here's the part Jake is quietly thrilled about. Because Social Security is covering most of his living expenses, his $800,000 retirement portfolio is barely getting touched. He's only pulling about $36,000 a year from it to cover the gap. Meanwhile, that portfolio is still growing at roughly 7% a year. By age 65, after withdrawals, Jake's portfolio is worth about $854,000, higher than when he started. He's collecting Social Security, his investments are growing, and he didn't have to wait for any of it. Marcus, meanwhile, is doing the opposite. He's not collecting anything from Social Security. To live, he's pulling the full $60,000 a year out of his retirement account, not just covering a gap, but funding his entire lifestyle from his savings. By age 65, his $800,000 portfolio has shrunk to about $774,000. Still growing slightly thanks to market returns, but barely keeping up with what he's drawing down. Jake's friends ask him about retirement. He tells them he's loving it. Marcus's friends ask him about retirement. He tells them his plan is working, even though every quarter he watches his balance drop a little and has to remind himself that this is the price of patience. Jake feels like a genius. Marcus feels like he's testing his own discipline. The social proof alone makes Jake feel like he's winning by a mile. The $1,960 check is the number everyone talks about. It's the number on the retirement forum, the number Jake's buddy brags about at the barbecue, the number that feels like winning. What nobody talks about is everything baked into that check that you don't see on day one. Permanence. The 30% reduction Jake locked in isn't a temporary haircut he can fix later. It's permanent. Every single check, every single month for the rest of his life and for his wife's life if he dies first. He didn't make a decision for 3 years. He made a decision for the next 30. Survivor benefits. This is the one most people miss entirely. When Jake dies, his wife doesn't get to collect both her benefit and his, she gets the higher of the two. By claiming at 62, Jake just permanently cut the survivor benefit she'll rely on by 30%. If she lives 20 years past him, that's roughly $200,000 less in her pocket over the rest of her life. A decision Jake made before his 63rd birthday is going to affect her retirement 2 decades from now. The earnings test. Jake decided he was done working, but a lot of early claimers don't. If you claim before full retirement age and you keep earning more than $24,480 a year in 2026, Social Security claws back $1 for every 2 you earn over the limit. Most people learn about this from a letter, not a podcast. Taxes. Once Jake starts drawing from his retirement accounts and combining it with Social Security, up to 85% of his Social Security can become taxable. That $1,960 might net closer to $1,500 once the IRS gets its share, and the one risk nobody likes to discuss out loud: longevity. The average 62-year-old American man lives to about 83. The average woman lives to 86. If Jake hits 85, 88, 90, Every year past his late 70s, he's leaving money on the table compared to what he could have had. None of this shows up in the $1,960 a month number on day one, but it shows up eventually. This is where Marcus's story gets harder before it gets better. From 62 to 70, he's not collecting a single Social Security check. To live, he has to keep pulling $60,000 a year out of his retirement account. Every year. For 8 straight years. By age 70, Marcus has withdrawn $480,000 in nominal dollars from his portfolio. His balance has shrunk from $800,000 down to roughly $716,000. And that's after market returns helping him along the way. He spent down nearly an entire year's worth of his original savings just to bridge the gap to 70. Jake, by contrast, has now collected about $188,160 in lifetime Social Security checks. His portfolio is still mostly intact at around $974,000 because Social Security covered the bulk of his expenses. On paper, Jake is ahead by almost $450,000. He's been collecting checks for 8 years. Marcus has collected 0. This is the moment Marcus is most likely to question his strategy. He's watched his retirement balance drop while Jake's has grown. He's seen his neighbor file at 62 and start vacationing, and he's about to spend the rest of his life trying to catch up to a head start that feels impossible to overcome. Then he turns 70. He files, and his check is $3,472 a month for the rest of his life, $1,512 more than Jake's every single month. That's an extra $18,144 a year, guaranteed, for as long as Marcus is alive. And this is also where the 8% guaranteed return story gets exposed for what it really is. Every retirement video, every advisor, every podcast tells you the same thing. Waiting until 70 gives you a guaranteed 8% return per year on your benefit. Better than the stock market. You can't beat it. But Marcus didn't get 8% for free. To earn that boost, he had to drain his investment portfolio for 8 years to cover his living expenses, and that portfolio was earning roughly 7% a year. So the real comparison isn't 8% versus 0. It's 8% on a future check versus 7% on his actual money. The real net advantage of waiting is much smaller than the headline. It's not a miracle return. It's a trade. Marcus made a smart trade, but he made a much smaller trade than he realized. From 70 onward, the math finally starts moving in Marcus's direction. Every month, he's collecting $1,512 more than Jake. Every year, that gap widens. Slowly at first, but it widens. By age 75, Marcus has collected about $208,000 in Social Security. Jake has collected about $306,000. Jake is still ahead of Box, but the gap is closing fast. By age 78, the standard break-even age people talk about, the lifetime totals are nearly tied. Jake has collected about $376,000. Marcus has collected about $333,000. That's $43,000 still separating them, and Marcus is gaining ground at $18,000 a year. At age 80, they cross. Jake has collected about $423,000 in lifetime Social Security. Marcus has collected about $417,000. After 18 years of being behind, Marcus has finally caught up. From this point forward, every year of life is pure gain for Marcus over Jake. By age 85, the picture has reversed completely. Jake has collected about $541,000 in lifetime Social Security. Marcus has collected about $625,000, $84,000 more, despite starting 8 years later. The 30% cut Jake took at 62 has compounded into a $250,000 gap, growing every year. If both men live to 90, Marcus is ahead by roughly $175,000. If they make it to 95, Marcus is ahead by more than $265,000. The longer they live, the more delaying pays. And this is the part most YouTube videos quietly skip. That's only true if they both live that long. Jake doesn't think he's going to die young. Nobody does. But statistics don't care what Jake thinks. Out of every 100 American men who reach age 62, roughly 17 will not make it to 78, 1 in 6. If Jake is one of those men, if he gets a diagnosis at 70, has a heart attack at 73, dies of something nobody saw coming at 75, every single piece of advice in this video flips. Jake will have collected about $306,000 in Social Security before he died. Marcus will have collected about $208,000. Jake's family came out ahead by nearly $100,000, and every retirement video that tells you to always wait until 70 quietly assumes you'll live to 85. That's an assumption, not a guarantee. There's also the question of what Jake and Marcus did with the money. Jake collected Social Security from 62 to 70, while his investment portfolio kept growing untouched. By 70, Jake's portfolio was worth about $974,000. Marcus's portfolio was down to $716,000 because he had to drain it to bridge the gap. That portfolio difference is roughly $258,000, almost exactly the amount Marcus will eventually catch up by waiting. When you add up everything, the lifetime Social Security and the remaining portfolio, Jake and Marcus end up much closer than either of them realizes. At age 85, the gap in total wealth between them is much smaller than the gap in just Social Security checks. Marcus's bigger check is partly canceled out by the savings he had to burn to earn it. This is the part nobody puts on a thumbnail. The 8% boost looks like free money. It isn't. The 30% cut looks like a disaster. It usually isn't either. If I only showed you the downsides of claiming at 62, I'd be doing exactly what every retirement YouTuber does. Claiming early has real advantages people love to gloss over. You're guaranteed to collect something. 8 years of guaranteed checks beats a hypothetical bigger check you might not live to see. The break-even math only works if you actually reach the break-even age. Roughly 1 in 6 men who reach 62 won't make it to 78. You preserve your investments. Every dollar of Social Security that hits Jake's account at 62 is a dollar he doesn't have to pull from his 401k. That account keeps compounding. By the time both men reach 85, the portfolio Jake didn't have to touch may be worth $200,000 to $250,000 more than Marcus's portfolio, partly offsetting the smaller monthly Social Security checks. You buy freedom now, not later. A 62-year-old has different health, different energy, and different opportunities than a 70-year-old. Money spent traveling with grandkids at 64 may be worth more in life experience than the same money received at 80 when the body and the world both look very different. And there are specific family situations where claiming early is mathematically correct. A lower earning spouse who isn't the household's primary survivor benefit. A serious health diagnosis. A household where the higher earner is the one delaying, meaning the early claiming spouse's reduced check doesn't determine the long-term survivor outcome. Claiming at 62 isn't a financial mistake. It's a financial mistake when made for the wrong reasons in the wrong situation. Waiting wins in specific, identifiable situations. If you're in good health with a family history of longevity, parents or grandparents who lived into their late 80s or 90s, the math overwhelmingly favors delay. That extra $18,000 a year you collect from 80 to 95 is the single largest payoff in the Social Security system, and it requires you to be alive to receive it. If you're the higher earner in a marriage, delaying isn't just about you. It's locking in a survivor benefit that could pay your spouse 20 to 25 more years after you're gone. For many couples, the survivor benefit is the single most valuable thing Social Security provides, and it's directly tied to when the higher earner files. If you have other retirement assets that can comfortably bridge the gap without gutting your portfolio, the real cost of waiting drops dramatically. Marcus had to drain his savings hard to get to 70. Someone with a pension, a paid-off house, and significant taxable account savings can bridge much more cheaply. And if you're still working into your 60s, claiming early triggers 2 penalties at once: the permanent reduction and the earnings test clawback. For working retirees, waiting until at least full retirement age is almost always the cleaner play. Here's the framing nobody uses but should. Social Security wasn't designed as an investment. It was designed as longevity insurance. Protection against living too long and running out of money. Delaying maximizes that insurance. If you don't need the insurance, if you have a pension, plenty of savings, and short life expectancy, delaying is overpaying for a policy you'll never use. Jake and Marcus both walked away from that decision thinking they were making the smart play. Jake thought claiming early was the proven path to enjoying retirement. Marcus thought waiting was the obvious mathematical winner. Neither of them actually sat down and mapped out what this costs, in dollars, in years, in family protection, in the risk of dying before the math pays off, over the full length of a retirement. The real trap isn't claiming at 62, and it isn't waiting until 70. The real trap is picking one of them based on a YouTube headline, a podcast clip, or something your neighbor said at the barbecue, without ever running the full numbers for your own life. If you live to 78, the decision was close to a wash. If you live to 85, waiting pays. If you live to 95, waiting pays enormously. If you die at 70, claiming early was the right call. If you have a spouse who depends on your survivor benefit, waiting is almost always the right call. If you're single in poor health, claiming early is almost always the right call. The honest answer isn't 62 or 70. It's a calculation that depends on your health, your spouse, your savings, and your honest read of how long you're likely to be around. And if you're wondering whether there's a smarter strategy than either extreme, claiming somewhere in the middle, splitting the decision between spouses, or claiming early and investing every check, that's a completely different conversation. And the math might change everything you think you know. But for now, the next time someone tells you to always claim at 62 or always wait until 70, ask them one question. Did you include everything? Because the answer that includes everything is the only answer that matters.